That's the part I can't let go of. Not what he was doing, but how normal everything felt. Because something terrible was happening 3 feet away from me, and I didn't even know.
Here's the thing about living alone in Houston. You stop noticing people after a while. That sounds cold, I know. But when you're paying $1,100 a month for a one-bedroom in Midtown and working 50-hour weeks at a logistics company off Westheimer, you don't really have the bandwidth to care about your neighbors. You learn their schedules by accident. The guy above you who drops something heavy every single Thursday night at 11 p.m., the woman next door who plays corridos so loud you can feel the bass through the drywall. You don't know these people. You just know their sounds. That was my life in the Crestwood Arms Apartments on Elgin Street, 3rd floor, Unit 3C. I'd been there 2 years when Marcus moved in across the hall. This was October, Houston October, which means it's still 80-something degrees outside, and everyone's annoyed that it's not actually fall yet. I remember because my SC unit was making a grinding noise and my landlord, Mr. Pham, had been looking into it for 11 days. I had a standing fan pointed directly at my face, and I was eating cereal for dinner when I first saw Marcus. I heard the elevator ding, then the sound of something heavy being dragged. I opened my door just to look, not to help. I'm being honest, and there he was. Medium height, maybe late 30s. Dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in a week. He was dragging a large plastic tub, the kind you get at Home Depot, and he had exactly 3 boxes stacked on top of a hand truck. That was it. That was all his stuff. He looked up when he heard my door. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I said. He went into 3B. I closed my door and finished my cereal. I told my friend Destiny about it the next day over the phone. Destiny's been my best friend since community college, and she has opinions about everything, which I find exhausting and necessary in equal measure. 3 boxes and a tub? She said. That's it? That's it. So either he just got out of prison, just got divorced, or he's one of those minimalist freaks who post about how they only own 12 items. Could just be a normal person who doesn't own a lot of stuff. Babe, normal people own a lot of useless stuff. That's what makes them normal. I heard her exhale. She was smoking on her porch. I could picture it exactly. Did he seem weird? He seemed tired. Tired how? I thought about it. Like, not just sleepy. Like tired of something. That's everyone in Houston. She wasn't wrong. The first 2 weeks, Marcus was unremarkable. I'd see him in the hallway sometimes by the mailboxes, once in the parking lot loading groceries into a 10-year-old Honda Accord. He always said hey. I always said hey back. He kept to himself. He was quiet, genuinely quiet, which in that building was so rare it was almost suspicious on its own. My upstairs neighbor, Terrence, shook the whole building with his footsteps. The woman in 3A, Mrs. Okafor, sometimes stood in her doorway and just watched the hallway, which I'd long since decided was a cultural thing. I wasn't going to make weird in my head. The building super, a guy named Greg who smelled permanently of cigarettes and WD-40, had a habit of knocking on doors for no clear reason and then forgetting why he knocked. Marcus was none of that. Marcus was just there, a presence behind a door. I didn't think about him much until the third week of October. I got home late on a Wednesday, maybe 9:30, after stopping at the Heb on Dunlavy for groceries. I was in the elevator with my bags when I noticed something. The elevator smelled like dirt. Not like someone tracked in mud, more like fresh earth. The way a garden smells right after rain, that deep, wet soil smell. It was strong enough that I actually looked down to see if someone had left something. In the elevator, nothing. Just the scuffed linoleum floor and the smudged stainless steel walls. I figured someone brought in a plant. Stood there with a big bag of potting soil, maybe. Normal explanation done, but when the doors opened on 3 and I walked to my unit, I noticed Marcus's door was open. Not all the way, maybe 4 inches, and the smell was coming from there, stronger. I slowed down without meaning to. Through that 4-inch gap, darkness. No lights on that I could see, and a sound low, rhythmic, like digging. A soft, repetitive thump scrape. I stood there for probably 3 seconds. Then his door swung slightly, and the smell hit me stronger, and I basically power walked into my apartment, locked the door, and stood in my kitchen with my heart doing something stupid. Then I felt ridiculous. He's probably repotting plants, I told myself. In the dark? In the dark for some reason, because some people do that. Whatever. I put my groceries away and watched TV until midnight and told myself I'd forgotten about it. I texted Destiny the next morning. Okay, weird thing. She replied in 40 seconds because she works from home and has no discipline. Tell me. My neighbor's door was open last night, and it smelled like dirt, and I could hear like digging sounds, digging, rhythmic, like someone using a shovel, in an apartment. Did you knock? Nitrogen monoxide. Why not? Because it was weird. I didn't want to get involved in whatever that was. You're such a coward, Lau-oo. I prefer cautious. Same thing, different font. Was he home? I mean, his door was open, so probably. Maybe he was gardening. You can't garden in a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor. Tell him that. I put my phone down. I was running late for work. I told myself it was nothing and mostly believed it. Here's the thing that started to itch at me over the next few days. I paid attention to Marcus now. Not in a creepy way, just a low-level background awareness you develop when something registers as slightly off. The human brain is basically a pattern recognition machine that runs on anxiety, and mine had flagged Marcus as a pattern worth watching. He left every morning around 7:15. I knew because I left at 7:30 and I'd started timing my exits slightly differently. He always wore the same type of outfit, dark pants, a gray or navy long sleeve, work boots. He carried a small black duffel bag. Where did he work? I didn't know. I still don't know, actually. He came home inconsistently, sometimes 5 p.m., sometimes 11 p.m. Once I woke up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard him come in. The particular sound of his door, which had a slightly different click from mine, a sound I'd apparently memorized without trying. He never had anyone over. No voices from his unit. No TV sounds. Almost nothing except, occasionally, that same low rhythmic noise. Not always. Maybe twice in that next week. Always at night. Thump, scrape, I Googled, can you hear digging through apartment walls like a completely normal and well-adjusted person. Got nothing useful. Googled neighbor making rhythmic sounds at night and went down a forum rabbit hole about upstairs neighbors and passive-aggressive noise complaints for 20 minutes before closing my laptop and going to bed. The conversation that actually worried me happened on a Friday night. I was coming back from Destiny's place. She lives in Montrose, not far, and I got home around midnight, tipsy but not drunk. I was fishing for my keys when Marcus's door opened and he came out. He looked worse than when he'd moved in. That was my first thought. He'd lost weight, or maybe the weight had just redistributed in a way that made his face look gaunt. His eyes had that glazed, unfocused quality of someone running on bad sleep and worse food. "Hey," I said, because what else do you say? He looked at me for a second like he was recalibrating, like he'd forgotten I existed, and was surprised to find me in the hallway. "Hey," he said. Then, after a pause, "You ever feel like you're running out of time?" I blinked. Like, in general? Or just in general? Like the clock's been going this whole time, and you only just noticed. I was a little drunk, and this was a strange thing to say at midnight in a hallway. So I said, "Yeah, sometimes, I guess." "You okay?" He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Getting there, he went to the elevator, pressed the button, waited with his back to me. I went inside. I stood in my kitchen for a while after that. Getting there. Getting where? Getting there from where? I texted Destiny. My neighbor just said something weird to me. She was asleep. She didn't see it until morning. A week after that, the smell came back. Not just in the hallway this time. In my apartment. I noticed it Thursday evening. That same dark, wet earth smell, faint but unmistakable. At first, I thought it was coming through the gap under my front door, so I put a towel there. The smell didn't go away. If anything, it was slightly stronger near the wall that I shared with Marcus's unit. I pressed my ear to the wall, which, yes, I realize is insane behavior. Nothing, just silence. I stepped back, looked at the wall. It was a standard apartment, wall painted beige, slightly scuffed near the baseboard from where I'd shoved furniture around when I moved in. I'd never paid it any particular attention, but now I noticed there was a very slight discoloration near the bottom of the wall. A patch maybe 8 inches wide, slightly darker than the surrounding paint. Like something had gotten the drywall damp from the other side and dried unevenly. I crouched down, touched it. The paint felt normal, dry, slightly cooler than the rest of the wall, but that could be anything. A drafty baseboard, a pipe running behind it. I took a photo of it on my phone for reasons I couldn't fully articulate. That weekend I talked to Mrs. Okafor in the hallway. She was coming back from church Sunday morning, big hat, good perfume, and I asked her, trying to keep it casual, if she'd noticed anything strange lately. She gave me a look. Strange how? Like sounds. Or smells. Anything from the new neighbor. Mrs. Okafor lived in 3A, which shared a wall with both my unit and Marcus's. She had sharp eyes, the kind that made you feel like she was doing a full read on you while you were talking. She was quiet for a moment. "I hear things sometimes," she said. "What kind of things?" "At night?" Movement. I thought he was rearranging furniture. She paused. But it's been 3 weeks now, and you don't rearrange furniture for 3 weeks. Have you talked to him? I brought him food when he moved in. Jollof rice. She said this the way you'd say, I did the decent thing. He thanked me, but he didn't open the door more than a crack. He took the food and closed it again. She looked down the hall at his door. I've thought about knocking again, but something tells me not to. Yeah, I said. Something tells you not to also? I didn't answer that. I said it was probably nothing and went back inside and felt worse than I had before talking to her. I called Destiny that afternoon. Actually called, didn't text. She picked up on the second ring. Okay, so you're calling me, which means this is a thing now, she said. It's becoming a thing, I said, or I'm losing my mind. One of the two. I told her everything. The dirt smell, the noises, the wall discoloration, the late-night hallway conversation, what Mrs. Oakoffer said. Destiny was quiet for a while, which is not typical for Destiny. Destiny's usual mode is immediate opinion, instant hot take. The quiet meant she was actually thinking. Okay, she finally said. What are the normal explanations? He could be into indoor gardening, like serious gardening. Grow lights, soil, all of it. What else? He could be doing construction. Hobby construction? Like building furniture in an apartment. With what tools? I don't know, Day. What's the not normal explanation? I don't want to say it out loud. Why not? Because if I say it out loud, it becomes a thing. I actually think, and right now it's just a vague bad feeling. Okay, I'll say it then, Destiny said. What if he's buried something in there? The word buried sat in the middle of the conversation like a stone. That's a crazy thing to say, I said. I know. You can't bury something in an apartment. The floor is concrete. Is it? Old buildings have wood subfloors. Crestwood Arms was built in 1987. I'm just saying. Old enough? I didn't say anything. What are you going to do? She asked. Nothing. I'm going to do nothing because I have no evidence of anything, and I'm probably just a paranoid person who got creeped out by a guy who likes to garden at night. Okay. Text me if anything else happens. Obviously. 3 days later, something happened that I think about a lot. It was a Tuesday. I'd gotten home from work around 7 p.m., made pasta, was watching something on Netflix. I couldn't tell you what. I was barely paying attention. Around 9:30, I heard a knock on my door. Not Marcus's door. My door. I looked through the peephole. Marcus. He was standing in the hallway, looking directly at the peephole, which, if you've never had someone look directly at your peephole from outside while you're looking through it, is one of the most unsettling experiences available to apartment dwellers. You know rationally that he can't see you, but something in the brain doesn't believe that. I stood there for a second. He knocked again. 3 knocks. Patient, not aggressive. I opened the door. Close, he looked bad. Real bad. Like he'd aged in the month since he moved in. His skin had a grayish quality in the hallway light, and there was dried something on his left forearm. I didn't look at it too long, told myself it was paint or grease. Hey, I said. God, I kept saying hey. It was all I had. Sorry to bother you, he said. His voice was the same, low, calm, like a guy who'd done a lot of therapy or a lot of time alone. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Have you heard anything from my apartment? Like sounds. I want to know if the noise is carrying." I looked at him. Something in my brain said, "Be careful here." Not dramatically, not in a horror movie way, just a quiet internal flag. "Be careful." "Little bit," I said. "Nothing major." "Why?" "I've been working on a project," he said. "Late nights. I want to make sure it's not bothering anyone." "What kind of project?" He paused. The pause was maybe 2 seconds, but it felt long. "Construction," he said. "Home improvement stuff." "Oh," I nodded like that was a normal thing. "Cool. What are you working on?" Another pause. "Reinforcing the floor?" I didn't say anything to that. "Old buildings settle," he said, almost like he'd prepared that line. "The subfloor gets soft. It's good to fix it before it becomes a problem." "For sure," I said. "Makes sense." He nodded, said thanks for not complaining, said good night, went back across the hall. I closed my door, stood in my kitchen, heard his door close, heard the lock turn, reinforcing the floor. I got my phone and called Destiny. It was 9:45 p.m. She answered. "He just came to my door," I said. "What?" He knocked on my door asking if I could hear him working. Said he's reinforcing the floor, reinforcing the... I know. Why does a renter reinforce a floor? He said old buildings settle. Okay, but why does a renter fix structural issues in a building they don't own? That's the landlord's problem. That's always the landlord's problem. I sat down on my couch. The wall behind me was the shared wall with Marcus's apartment. I became very aware of that. "Day," I said. "Yeah, I think something is really wrong." "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think so too." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and running everything through my head in loops. The smell, the noises, the dark patch on the wall, the conversation in the hallway, reinforcing the floor. At 1 a.m., I got up and Googled Crestwood Arms Apartments, Elgin Street, Houston. Standard results. The building's website. It had a website now, ran by a property management company. A couple of Yelp reviews. An apartment listing aggregator. I clicked through to the aggregator and found the building's rental history. Useless stuff mostly, vacancy rates, average rent prices going back 5 years. And then I Googled Crestwood Arms Houston crime, basically as a long shot. One result. A Houston Chronicle article from 4 years ago. I clicked it. It was a brief piece, the kind of short. Just the facts local crime, reporting, that newspapers do when something happened, but there's not enough info. Yet for a real story, the headline was, "Police investigating disappearance of Houston man, last seen at Midtown apartment." The man's name was Daniel Ashebe, 34 years old. Last seen entering his apartment in the 2800 block of Elgin Street. A neighbor reported not seeing him for 2 weeks. Building management had done a welfare check and found the apartment empty, with what the article carefully called unusual modifications to the floor of the unit. The unit number wasn't mentioned in the article. I sat with that for a long time. Then I grabbed my phone and texted Destiny, even though it was 1:15 a.m. "Wake up, I need to tell you something." She called me back at 1:22. "It's the middle of the night," she said, but her voice was alert. She'd been awake, too. I told her about the article. She was quiet. I heard her breathing. "Okay," she said. "What floor is he on?" "Third, 3B. The article doesn't say which unit." "No. Did anyone get arrested? Did they find him?" "I only found the one article. There might be follow-ups, but I was already typing." "Hang on." I searched Daniel Ashebe Houston. Found a follow-up piece 6 weeks later. 2 paragraphs. Case remained unsolved. Daniel Ashebe had not been located. Police were continuing to investigate. No arrests. "Nothing," I said. "He was just gone." "And the floor," Destiny said. "The unusual modifications." "Yeah." We were both quiet. "I want to say you're being paranoid," she said. "I want to say that a lot." "What?" "But I can't actually think of a normal explanation for reinforcing your apartment floor at night. I've been trying since you called me. I cannot get there. What do I do, Day?" "I don't know." A pause. "You could call the non-emergency police line." "And say what?" "My neighbor is noisy and I found an old news article." When you put it like that, they'll think I'm crazy. "You might be crazy." "I know, but maybe not." "I know." "She told me to put a chair under my door handle that night." She said it like a joke, but she also meant it. I told her she was being dramatic. I also put a chair under my door handle. By the end of that week, the smell had gotten noticeably stronger. Not overwhelming. You wouldn't clock it if you walked into my apartment cold. But if you lived there, if you'd been breathing that air for weeks, you knew it was building. That cold, dark, wet earth smell that I'd started associating exclusively with the wall near my couch. I bought an air freshener. It didn't help. It just made the apartment smell like artificial lavender and dirt, which was somehow worse. Destiny came over on Saturday. She wanted to see. Experience was her word. She walked in, put her bag down, and stood in the middle of my living room. "I smell it," she said immediately. "You do?" "Yeah, that's not a plant smell. I've had plants my whole life. That's not soil from a plant." She walked over to the shared wall and stood close to it. "It's stronger here." "I know." She turned to look at me. Destiny is not a dramatic person. Fundamentally, she presents as dramatic, but underneath it, she's one of the most grounded people I know. When she gets genuinely concerned, her face does something specific. It gets very still. All the expression just drains out. Her face was doing that thing. "You need to report this," she said. "I've been going back and forth on it. Not to the police necessarily. Just tell your landlord. Tell Mr. Pham. Let someone else know. Create a paper trail." "A paper trail for what?" "I still don't actually know anything." "A paper trail for the fact that you noticed something," she said. "That's it. You don't have to make any accusations. You just go to Mr. Pham and say, 'I've been smelling something strange coming from 3B and I wanted to report it.' That's it. That's the whole thing." She was right. I knew she was right. I'd been avoiding it because doing something official felt like committing to a belief I still wasn't totally sure I had. As long as I didn't report it, it could still be nothing. A weird neighbor, an unusual hobby, a coincidence, and an old news article. "Yeah," I said. "Okay, I'll talk to Pham Monday." "Monday," she said. "Not sometime this week. Monday." Monday. She stayed for dinner. We ordered Thai food and put on a movie and didn't talk about Marcus again. But around 10 p.m., Right as we were getting into the second act of the movie, we both heard it. Thump, scrape, faint, coming through the wall. Steady, patient. We looked at each other. How long does he usually do that? Destiny asked very quietly. Sometimes 20 minutes. Sometimes longer. We sat there listening to it. The movie kept playing, people talking, a soundtrack swelling, and underneath all of it, thump, scrape, like a heartbeat in the wall. I'm sleeping on your couch tonight, Destiny said. I figured. I went to see Mr. Pham first thing Monday morning, before work. He had a small office in the ground floor of the building. Barely an office, really more of a repurposed storage room with a desk wedged into it. He was a small, precise Vietnamese man in his 60s who I'd always found easy to deal with. No nonsense, usually fair, not the type to overpromise. I sat down across from him and told him what I'd told myself I'd say. That I'd been smelling something unusual from 3B, that I'd heard noises at night, that I wanted to report it formally. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. What kind of smell? He asked. Dirt like soil, fresh earth. Something shifted in his face. Very small, very fast. Something that looked like recognition. How long? He asked. Since he moved in. Maybe getting worse in the last 2 weeks. Mr. Pham nodded slowly. He opened a drawer in his desk and took out a folder, flipped through it, found something, looked at it. His face stayed neutral, but his jaw tightened slightly. I'm going to do a building inspection, he said. This week. Has anyone else complained? I asked. I'll handle it, he said. Not a direct answer. Mr. Pham, I'll handle it. He closed the folder. Thank you for coming to me. You did the right thing. I went to work. Sat at my desk all day feeling like I was underwater. Destiny sent me a check-in text around noon. How'd it go? Weird. He got a look on his face when I described the smell, like he knew what I was talking about. What does that mean? No idea. Did he say anything? Said he'd do an inspection. Okay, that's something. Is it, though? She sent back a shrug emoji, which was fair. The inspection happened Wednesday. I know because I heard it. I was working from home that day. We had a half-day remote option, and I'd taken it partly because I didn't want to miss anything, and around 11 a.m. I heard voices in the hallway. I looked through my peephole. Mr. Pham was in the hallway with another man I didn't recognize, older, heavy-set, carrying a clipboard. They knocked on Marcus's door. Long pause. They knocked again. Another pause. Mr. Pham produced a key. They went inside. I stood at my peephole for an embarrassing amount of time. Maybe 10 minutes. Nothing happened. The door stayed closed. No sounds I could identify. After about 20 minutes, they came back out. I watched Mr. Pham and the other man stand in the hallway talking. Their voices were too low to make out. The other man wrote something on his clipboard. His face was blank in the professional way that people who've seen things make their faces blank. They went to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. Just before the doors opened, the other man said something to Mr. Pham. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Mr. Pham's reaction. A small, sharp nod, like someone confirming something they'd already feared. The elevator doors closed. I went and sat on my couch with my legs feeling weird and my phone in my hand. Marcus didn't come home that night or the next night. Greg, the building super, was not a subtle man. He was the type of person who told you things he probably shouldn't because he genuinely couldn't hold them in, not maliciously, just constitutionally incapable of keeping his mouth shut. It was actually his best quality. I ran into him Thursday by the mailboxes. He looked like a man carrying something heavy and looking for an excuse to put it down. "You talked to Fam," he said. "Yeah," I said. "About 3B? Yeah." He looked up and down the lobby. Nobody else was around. He lowered his voice anyway. "The floor in there," he said. "The subfloor specifically." He stopped. "What about it?" "It's been worked on. Significant work. Like major digging." He said the word digging the way you'd say something you'd rather not say. "This is the third time this has happened in that unit." I stared at him. The third time. 3 tenants in 6 years. All short-term. 3 to 4 months each. He scratched the back of his neck. "Every time there's been modifications to the floor. The first time was the worst. That was, that's when it was in the news." "Daniel Achebe," I said. He looked at me sharply. "You know about that. I found an article." He was quiet for a moment. "They never found him," he said. "Police came through. Did their thing. Couldn't pin it on anyone. The apartment sat empty for a year." He exhaled. "Then Fam rented it again. Different person. Different situation. But same thing started happening after a couple months." "What happened to that person?" "They just left. In the middle of the night, basically. Just packed up and disappeared." He caught himself. "Look, I don't know what's happening in there. I genuinely don't. Could be different people with a weird coincidence. Could be something about the apartment itself, like some kind of structural thing that attracts a certain type of." He stopped again. "Where's Marcus now?" I asked. "Don't know. He's not answering the door. His car is still in the lot. But no one's seen him since Tuesday. He went back to whatever he'd been doing." I stood at the mailboxes for a while. 3 tenants. 3 times. Same apartment. I called Destiny and told her everything. "Okay," she said. "I need you to hear me. I'm hearing you. You need to either move out or call the actual police. Not the non-emergency line. The actual police." "And say what, Destiny?" "My neighbor disappeared and my super says this has happened before. They'll ask me what I actually know and I'll have nothing. You have the smell. You have the noises. You have the wall. You have the article. You have what Greg told you just now. It's all circumstantial. It's circumstantial until they look in that apartment. Fam already looked. Fam and some guy with a clipboard looked. That's not the same as a police investigation." I was pacing my apartment, which I'd started doing a lot, back and forth along the length of the living room. The shared wall on my left side every time I passed it. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," I said. "You're not." "How do you know?" "Because everything you've described is real and physical. The smell is real. I smelled it. The noises are real. I heard them. This isn't you imagining things." "Then why does it feel like I'm imagining things?" "Because the thing you're pointing at doesn't make sense yet," she said. "Your brain wants a rational explanation, and it can't find one, so it starts turning inward. That's not you losing your mind. That's you hitting the wall of what you actually know." I stopped pacing, stood in front of the shared wall. "I'm going to knock on his door," I said. Absolutely not. Just to see if he's there. Don't. Day, do not knock on that door. I'm serious. If something bad is happening in that apartment and you knock on that door, whoever is on the other side of it knows, you know? You understand? You become the person who knows. I stood there. Okay, I said. I won't knock. I didn't knock. What happened at 2:47 a.m. on Friday morning is the part I go back to the most. I was asleep, actually asleep, which had become a complicated achievement when I woke up to a sound. Not the thump scrape I'd gotten used to. Something different. A voice, low, muffled, coming through the wall. One voice, not a conversation, a monologue. I pressed my ear against the wall without thinking, the way you do when you're half asleep and your body operates before your brain can object. Marcus's voice. It had to be. I'd heard it enough times to know. He was talking at a pace that was too fast, too even, like someone reciting something, or like someone who'd been alone, too, long and had started narrating to fill the silence. I couldn't make out specific words, just the rhythm of it, the rise and fall, the occasional pause, the resuming. Then the thump scrape started again underneath the voice. Talking while working. I pulled back from the wall, sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. My apartment was quiet except for my own breathing and the distant sound of a car on Elgin Street. Here's the thing that got me. The voice didn't sound afraid. It didn't sound unhinged, not in the ways I'd been half expecting if I let my imagination run too far. It sounded purposeful, like someone explaining a process, like a man who believed completely in what he was doing. That was somehow worse than anything else. The calmness of it, the sense that whatever was happening on the other side of that wall was, to Marcus, reasonable, logical, something that made sense. I got my phone. It was 2:51 a.m. now. I went to the camera, turned it to video, held it up to the wall, which I know. There's nothing to see through drywall. I don't know what I was thinking. I just needed to do something. Anything. I recorded 40 seconds of video. My own wall, dark, silent from the camera's perspective, though I could still hear him through the wall. The smell was strong tonight. I pulled the towel away from under my front door, and the smell was there in the hallway too. The whole hallway heavier than I'd ever experienced it. I went back to bed and lay there with my eyes open until 5 a.m. The police came on Saturday morning. I don't know exactly what prompted it, whether Mr. Pham finally made a call or someone else in the building, or whether the missing persons report on Marcus had progressed. I just heard the knock, the voices, the sound of a door being opened. I looked through my peephole, and there were 2 uniformed officers and a detective in plain clothes, and the building super and Mr. Pham. They were in there for a long time. I sat on my couch. I texted Destiny. Police are here. She started typing immediately. At 3B? Yeah. Okay, stay in your apartment. Obviously. What are they doing? I can't see. They've been in there like 40 men. 40 minutes became an hour. Then an hour and 20. At some point I heard more footsteps in the hallway. More people. Heavier equipment. The sounds of official activity that have a specific cadence you recognize, even if you've never been near it before. At around noon, someone knocked on my door. The detective. Plain clothes, a woman, mid-40s, tired eyes. She introduced herself as Detective Reyes, showed me a badge, asked if she could ask me a few questions. I said yes. She came in, looked around my apartment with professional neutrality, sat at my kitchen table. She asked how long I'd lived there, what I'd noticed, when I'd first noticed it, whether I'd spoken to the tenant in 3B. I told her everything, all of it, exactly as I've told you. She wrote things down, asked clarifying questions, never reacted to anything I said with surprise, which could mean she was well trained, or could mean nothing I said was surprising to her. At the end, she closed her notebook and said, "We're going to need to ask you not to discuss the details of what we found in there with anyone for now. What did you find?" I asked. She looked at me for a moment. "The investigation is ongoing, but something? The investigation is ongoing," she said again. Not unkindly, just firmly, the way you close a door. She left her card on my table. She told me to call if I remembered anything else, or if I felt unsafe, or if Marcus made contact. If Marcus made contact, which means as of Saturday at noon, they hadn't found him. I moved out 2 weeks later, found a place in the Heights, first floor, which I used to prefer, but now I'm not sure about. Destiny helped me move. We didn't talk about it much. There's a point where you've talked about something enough and the talking stops helping. The investigation is still, as far as I know, ongoing. I Googled it a few times over the following months. Found nothing new. No arrests reported. No Marcus, no resolution. Here's what I know for certain. The police were in Unit 3B for 6 hours. I heard them in the hallway at various points throughout, taking photographs, speaking in low voices. A vehicle that I'm fairly sure was not a police cruiser arrived in the afternoon, a white van with no markings on it. 4 people in protective gear went up. The apartment has been empty since. Mr. Pham offered me a rent reduction to stay. I said no. I've wondered since then why he offered it. Was it guilt? An attempt to keep the building looking occupied normal? An acknowledgement somewhere in there of what he should have done sooner? I don't know. I don't know what was in that apartment. I don't know what Marcus was doing in the hours and days before the police came. I don't know what unusual modifications to the floor looked like the first time, or the second time, or the third. I don't know where he went. What I know is this: the smell in my new apartment is clean. It smells like fresh paint and someone else's old cooking in the specific, neutral nothing of a place that's just a place. I sleep with the window cracked. I know my neighbors by their sounds. The guy above me watches sports at high volume. The woman next door has a baby who cries around 3 a.m. Normal sounds. I love them. I love every boring, ordinary, completely explicable one. But sometimes in the 15 seconds before sleep comes, when the apartment is completely quiet, I think about the sound of that voice through the wall, the rhythm of it, the terrible calm purposefulness. And I think about the fact that whatever he was doing, he'd been doing it for weeks before I noticed, that I walked past his door every day, that I said hey and he said hey and we were just 2 people in a hallway. That's the part that I can't fully let go of, not what he was doing. I can wall that off. I've gotten good at not thinking about what specifically was happening. In Unit 3B, it's the normalness, the hallway greetings, the routine. The fact that extraordinary and terrible things can be happening 3 feet away from where you eat your cereal and watch Netflix and fall asleep, and you can just not know for weeks, for months, maybe longer. Maybe there are smells you've gotten used to. Maybe there are sounds you've explained away. Maybe there's something in the walls of the place where you live right now. Something slow and patient and ongoing that you haven't quite gotten around to questioning. Probably not, but probably is doing a lot of work in that sentence. If you have concerns about a neighbor or unusual activity in your building, contact your local non-emergency police line. In Houston, that's 713-884-3131. The Houston Chronicle article referenced in this account has been omitted to protect the privacy of individuals involved.